Hello and welcome back to Bonkers for Boro with me, Phil Spencer. It's a bit of an impromptu video, this one. You might see that I'm in a different setting. That's because my house is in absolute disarray at the moment, but I still wanted to do a quick catch-up in the build-up to the match with Southampton to talk about some of the things that are kind of going on at the moment. It's Friday afternoon. We've had Rob Edwards' press conference this afternoon. He's spoken in a bit of detail, talking about the match with Southampton, what he's expecting to come from it. But I think the main takeaways were with regards to Middlesbrough's defensive injury situation. They were the big stories that were coming from that press conference. He spoke about George Edmundson. He spoke about Darragh Lenihan. Spoke about Dael as well. All three of them with big updates on their fitness going into the match with Southampton. To start off with George Edmundson, of course, he went off injured in the match against West Brom last week. He suffered a clash of heads, which brought that nasty facial injury, that real bump that came on his eyebrow. It was the size of an egg when he came off the pitch, and then there was pictures on social media in the days afterwards of just how nasty it was looking. That was a nasty one. It was a bad injury when he came off, but Rob Edwards said that barring the ugly nature, I guess, of the injury, it was one which wasn't too serious, wasn't any structural damage to George Edmundson's face. So he's going to be fit and available. He's been training all week, so he'll be available to play against Southampton this weekend. You're looking at Dael as well. He's someone who's improving in terms of his fitness. He's been suffering with a calf injury, but he's going to be back probably next week. I think the match with Southampton is going to come a little bit too soon for him, but he's on his way back to fitness. But the big story was with regards to Darragh Lenihan and his fitness, I guess, because Rob Edwards gave the bad news that Darragh Lenihan suffered an Achilles injury, which is going to keep him out for a number of weeks. Now, the question was asked whether it was the same Achilles that's been troubling him for quite a long time. Of course, Darragh Lenihan was out for around about 2 years before he started that match against Preston just a couple of weeks ago. But it wasn't the same Achilles, it's a different one. So that's some comfort, I guess. But still not good news for a player who was on his way back. He was sort of showing what he was capable of, someone who could still play a big role for Middlesbrough this season. It's really disappointing that he's facing another spell on the sidelines. It doesn't mean that it's he was sort of asked whether it was going to be a season-ending injury or anything like that, and that wasn't the case. It does seem like it's just going to be a matter of weeks at the moment, but I guess that's one that we just need to keep an eye on a little bit, because of course he has suffered these kind of injuries before, and of course there's going to be a real inclination not to rush him back from the injury. So good luck to Darragh Lenihan. Hopefully he does come back from this one a little bit quicker, because it'd be great to see him playing a more central role for Middlesbrough this season. Now, of course, Middlesbrough's defensive injuries have been a bit of a concern. Nato Borges went out on loan to Bristol City. We've got Adelson Malanda, who's not going to be coming in until January. So it has left Middlesbrough a little bit light of options in the back line. Of course, George Edmundson will be available for this one. But I caught up with Dom Shaw at the Northern Echo earlier on this week, who was keen to give a bit of a run-through of Middlesbrough's defensive injuries and why Rob Edwards won't be too worried just yet on that injury front.
It's funny how quickly things can change in football. A week or two ago, Dael had a remarkably impressive start to the season. Darragh Lenihan was on his way back. George Edmundson was just fit again. And obviously Luke Ayling and Alfie Jones were both playing so well. And Middlesbrough looked incredibly well stocked in defence. Obviously that has changed over the course of the last week or so. First, Dael suffers a calf injury in training during the international break. And then Darragh Lenihan, after coming back so impressively in that Preston game, was absent for the game on Friday night against West Brom, which leaves George Edmundson, Alfie Jones and Luke Ayling as the only three recognised central defenders. Then Edmundson is forced off with that pretty brutal eye injury. Matt Targett has to go inside, and it kind of takes us back to the end of last season when Michael Carrick was having to shift the defence around. And I think the inevitable conclusion, the obvious conclusion that many reached at the back end of last week was that this showed that Boro shouldn't have let Neto Borges leave. And I understand why fans would think that. However, Borges was the sixth choice central defender, and Boro had to trim their squad. Their 25-man squad is full now, and that is obviously without Neto Borges, who moved to Bristol City on loan. Borges, it became clear after Edwards had come in the summer, wasn't going to play at left wing back. He was going to be seen as a left-sided central defender, but he was well down the pecking order in that. And although Boro had their injury problems last season, Edwards can only go on the evidence that was in front of him. Dael Fry had only told us a couple of weeks ago that he feels as fit as he's ever felt. Darragh Lenihan was obviously on the way back, and Edwards had seen positive signs from him. Jones and Ayling were both playing well, and Edmundson was back as well. You only have to look at the problems from Boro had last year to think that Boro were maybe a bit naive in allowing Borges to leave. But I also think you're rewriting history in some senses in that. But there's every chance that Borges would have come on Friday and played 45 minutes then. But then, if George Edmundson is fine to play on Saturday at Southampton, which the indications were that he will be, I know the pictures that emerged in the day or two after the game weren't particularly great on Edmundson's part. They looked pretty brutal, but he had 8 days to recover from that. There was no concussion issues, Edwards confirmed after the game. So there's every chance, I think, that Edmundson will be available on Saturday. And Dael Fry was making good progress, Edwards said last week. So although Boro looks short now, there is a chance that Edmundson plays on Saturday, Fry's then back the following week, and Borges, had he been around, might have come on and played 45 minutes against Sheffield United, and that might have been it. Of course, we'll know more in a week or two's time. We'll know more then on Fry's injury and whether he's able to come back and have no ill effects from that. We'll know if Edmundson's eye is fine for him to play at Southampton. But it's not ideal, obviously, Boro having these defensive injuries. But I still don't think at this stage we're at the case where there's a need to panic. I think we saw on Saturday that even if Edmundson isn't fit to play at Southampton on Saturday, Matt Targett can move inside and do a really good job there. And of course, Boro have Adilson Malander coming in January as well, and there's real excitement about him. And I think the other thing with the makeshift defence on Friday night is until the 90th minute, when there was a momentary lapse in concentration, Boro had kept a clean sheet again. Boro had kept West Brom out, a good West Brom team out. So clearly it's not ideal, but Edwards won't be panicking, I don't think, at this stage, and hopefully the picture will look a lot more positive for Boro in a week's time.
So that was Dom Shaw from the Northern Echo speaking about Middlesbrough's defensive injuries. And of course, it's going to be really interesting to see what that means for Middlesbrough's team going into the match with Southampton this weekend. Now, Southampton aren't in a particularly good place at the moment. They've only won once this season, despite getting relegated from the Premier League last season. I think the feeling was that they were going to be challenging at the top end of the table. And I do think that they'll still get there. I do think they're a side who will be challenging for automatic promotion, maybe even the top 6. By the end of the season, but at the moment they're in a bit of a bad moment, and that could be perfect for Middlesbrough, who of course are in a really good moment. A team who are sitting top of the table, 4 points clear, with our best start ever to a league season. It really couldn't be going much better for Middlesbrough at the moment, and if we can get some of these players back fit, it could be a really, really positive couple of weeks for us as we look to continue this fine form into the winter months. Now, I think when you look at the team that Middlesbrough could select against Southampton, I think you're looking at Soldrin in goal, you're looking at 3 central defenders. I'd have thought that George Edmundson will probably be available and fit for this one. It sounds like he's been back in training and he will be fit to start this game, so I'd imagine it'll be him alongside Luke Ayling and Alfie Jones, Callum Britton, Matt Targett at wing backs, Aidan Morris and Hayden Hackney in central midfield. Feels almost inevitable at this point, and it's only really when you get into the final third when you start to think about where all of these players are going to sort of fit. There's a lot of competition for places there. I think, in my opinion, right now, you're probably looking at Sverri Nipan, who has to start, in my opinion. He's just such a quality player, someone who I do think Middlesbrough can be building their team around moving forward. So I'd really like him to play to see what he can offer against a really good side like Southampton. Tommy Conway has to start as well, in my opinion. He just brings so much to the attack. In terms of his efforts in front of goal, but also in terms of his work rate and his leadership, and just the fact that he's an absolute nuisance for defenders to try and handle. And then I think the other place kind of goes, it's probably going to be David Strelec or Kali Sen. You can probably toss a coin, really, to decide who it's going to be. I think David Strelec, of course, he started the game against West Brom last week. It might be that he's given another opportunity to start, but then Kali San was very impressive when he came off the bench. He got a goal as well. Another really good performance. He really worked hard, so it could be either of those two. Probably, for me, David Strelec might be the one who's edging it, I think, a little bit, but Kalisen would certainly have a big part to play as he comes off the bench. So it's going to be a really interesting one against Southampton. I'll be doing a more thorough, detailed video, not on a handheld phone like this, after that match, to do a bit of a recap on how the game's gone, and hopefully Middlesbrough will have extended their unbeaten run. So let me know what you think about the match. Let me know who you think should start against Southampton. So drop into the comments below. Let me know what you think, and if you have enjoyed this video despite the shaky camera work and the shoddy production, please do hit like, please do hit subscribe, and I promise it'll be better next time. Thanks very much. I'll catch up with you soon.